Right, everyone, welcome back to the Pits To Podium Formula One show. So that was the first segment that we saw with Robin coming on the show and giving us his 2 cents about the whole scenario with Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. But I think in this F1 report, it makes a lot of sense that we actually dive deep into this entire scenario and analyze the situation and see what potentially should happen and what actually could happen in this case regarding Vettel and Alonso. Right, so with Sebastian Vettel, I think he's currently standing in this position that I like to call the champion's crossroads. So there comes a time in the life and career of every single champion, regardless of whatever sport they're in, that they're facing a very precarious situation where they're in a situation full of hardships. It can be through injuries, it can be through a poor run of form, whatever it is, and they have two options on the door. They can either choose the easy route, that is to retire, maybe go the easy way, silently escape the sport and enjoy with all the riches and all their winnings. I mean, in Formula One, we've seen the likes of Nico Rosberg do it. In the world of cricket, we've seen the likes of Andrew Flintoff do it. And it's a fairly common thing. I mean, you've showed your talent with the entire world. You feel that it's about time that you leave the sport. And fair enough, lots of people have chosen that door. But what makes a true champion and what makes the differentiation between a victor and a champion is bouncing back from situations like this. And if you look at some proper greats of the sport, the likes of Tiger Woods, the likes of Michael Schumacher, Serena Williams, these proper champions and legends of the sport have bounced back from this champions crossroads, and they've chosen the harder way out, and they have managed to come back in and show the world that in fact they're still the same. In fact, if not the same, they're even better than what they left the sport with. If you look at Michael Schumacher's career, I think which would be the best one to identify, it's easy to forget that after 1995, Michael Schumacher did not win a single Formula One World Championship all the way until 2000. That's a lot of time. I mean, he spent a lot of years with Ferrari trying to engineer something, and he even got disqualified in the 1997 Formula One World Championship. So tough times do happen, but tough times actually breed tough people. So that was the thing with Michael Schumacher. He didn't give up. He actually took some time off when he fractured his leg, I think between 1988 and 89. And that's when he took some time, regained a bit of strength, came back in 2000, and eventually went on a run that nobody could ever replicate. 5 straight championships with Ferrari. That is something that is actually one of the more astounding accomplishments, not only in Formula One, but in any sport, full stop. So if something like that can be replicated by Sebastian Vettel, if he can choose the harder way out, if he can put in a lot of efforts, and this route of course takes a lot of determination, takes a lot of hunger, takes a lot of efforts, and just a little bit of luck as well to put you on the right track. So certainly it's doable for Sebastian Vettel. But on the flip side, Sebastian Vettel has long been an advocate of the fact that he doesn't really want to leave behind a legacy in Formula One. He's a rather more private person, more of an introvert, who wants to believe that a legacy doesn't really matter, so he wouldn't be thinking a lot about that. But trust me, as a champion, as a proper trained athlete, the fire is still brewing hard within you. I think you still feel the hunger to go out and prove everyone wrong and try to show the world that you're still championship winning material. And that fire will still be ignited right within Sebastian Vettel, regardless of how much he tells the media that he doesn't care about his image. So I think that certainly is one factor that Vettel will be thinking about. So initially, I think it will be a bit tough to engineer a move to the top teams. Say, Red Bull aren't really interested in getting him back in. With Mercedes as well, they would much more likely go to George Russell, a driver they've developed all the way through since the very beginning, if they had to replace anyone for that matter. So there's barely any chances for Vettel to actually get that miraculous move to a top team. And he's also rejected McLaren, so that would kind of give an intent. That is actually kind of a statement of intent that he doesn't really want to go to a midfield team like McLaren or Renault. So where does he go? I think at this moment in time, there are only 2 options that Sebastian Vettel can choose. He can either retire silently and actually leave the sport as a victor, a very talented and potent victor that is, but he wouldn't really be remembered as the champion. I don't think he really cares about that, but inside as a champion, you still want to go out there and prove everyone wrong for one last time. So another option for Vettel could be to take a year sabbatical, say something like what Alain Prost did back in 1992. Because Prost took a sabbatical for a year, came back in 1993 and won the World Championship with Williams and then retired at the end of that season. So something like that could be possible. Maybe Vettel can take some time off from the sport to recalibrate himself, take some time off, think about it, and maybe come back as an even stronger driver. That could be a real possibility. And if a seat in a top team opens, say like a Mercedes or a Red Bull, that could be one slot that Vettel could plug in and maybe go in there and perhaps challenge for World Championships once again. As a fan, I'd absolutely love to see Vettel in the sport, but at this stage, it seems just that tiny bit unlikely for the worst that Vettel would not be a part of the 2021 grid. Whether he returns or not, well, it's all a part of its character, what he decides and what he actually chooses to leave behind in Formula One. But I think it's going to be a very, very sad thing to see no Sebastian Vettel on the grid in 2021. Let's quickly discuss the matter of Fernando Alonso because, of course, Liberty Media is hot on his heels. Now that you know that Carlos Sainz is actually back in a top-seeded Ferrari, it really makes the Spanish market a really attractive one for Liberty. Because all of a sudden, you've got a Spanish driver in a top team like Ferrari, a young Spanish driver. You've got a Spanish GP as well that seems to be there for the medium to short term. And if you could get Fernando Alonso, a two-time world champion and a national icon in Spain, back into a team like Renault, I think it would just be like the icing on top of the cake. So that is one thing that Liberty Media are desperately looking out for. But frankly, it seems a bit tricky because Renault, now that they've laid off so many people inside the team, it would just look like a frivolous expenditure to try and spend millions and millions of dollars on a multi-world champion like Fernando Alonso. So I think from a financial point of view, it seems a bit tricky for Renault. And although Liberty Media are willing to pay the bills and they're willing to get Fernando Alonso back into the sport, it's all a question of what Fernando wanted. Because Fernando Alonso, when he was at McLaren, he's long expressed his desire not to be a part of a midfield team. I mean, if you look back at the years of McLaren and Fernando Alonso, you remember some big encounters like the GP2 engine issue and him constantly criticizing McLaren's lack of performances and Honda's poor engines. Renault are in that situation at this moment. Renault aren't really the fastest team in the world. They are doomed with, I think, major reliability issues and they've pretty much been stuck in the midfield for a very, very long time. So would a driver like Fernando Alonso, who quit Formula 1 for this very reason, come back for it just for the money? I really doubt that. Although Fernando Alonso, as a driver, he would be a really hungry driver to try and prove everyone wrong in Formula 1, I doubt that he really would want to make a comeback in a midfield team like Renault. So that really makes it a really tricky thing for 2021. But that said, if a double world champion like Fernando Alonso comes back to the sport, we would all welcome him back with open arms. Right, that, folks, is the end of the F1 report. Don't go anywhere because coming up in the next segment is the featured racing driver for this week. We're going to have one of India's finest experts in the world of motorsport on the show here to discuss his opinion on this entire matter. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back very, very shortly.